This is a 1977 Austin Allegro. But notice how I didn't say my Austin Allegro. And that is because this car has the reputation of being the worst British car ever made. But why? So I'll be honest with you, I did have to Google what makes the Austin Allegro so bad. Now, I am a lover of all classic cars, and it is fair to say that I prefer some to others, and an Austin Allegro has never really been on my list of a car to buy. But why? So Google says that it was a mixture of things that made the Allegro so bad. Now, there was cost cutting. There was cost cutting and there was bad build quality due to the labour strikes, apparently. That's what Google tells me. So I guess the first negative of an Austin Allegro is the build quality. Maybe they were rushed, maybe they were built cheaply, but who knows? So that is point one, the build quality, the cost cutting. Now, point number two, which I've heard a lot of people talk about, is the square steering wheel of an Austin Allegro. However, this steering wheel is definitely not square. I think the square steering wheels were on the early Allegros, but this makes me laugh because I can imagine them designing the Austin Allegro and saying, let's do a square steering wheel. But then a few years later, changing it back to a conventional round steering wheel, realizing the square steering wheel wasn't going to catch on. Negative point number three, which is also largely criticised, is the hydrogas suspension. Now, the hydrogas suspension is the fluid filled suspension, which has a tendency to sometimes leak and sag. However, the Allegro was not the only car to use the hydrogas suspension. Off the top of my head, I can think of early Minis used the same suspension, Metros used the same suspension, many other Austin cars used this suspension. However, no other car was classed as bad as the Allegro. So surely it can't just be the hydrogas suspension. It has to be a combination of negatives. But I do think the negativist point of all is, and I feel bad saying this, they're just ugly cars. But that's enough of the negativity. Let's actually have a look at this car and see what are the positives of this little Allegro. Let's see what we like about this poor little car. So let's start with the interior, as that is probably my favourite thing about the whole car. And look how nice it is. Now, a bit of history on this car. It has only done 47,000 miles, which is relatively low. I suppose you wouldn't want to drive an Allegro many more though. But the seats are in lovely, lovely original condition. This one has some period patches stitched on it. The back seat literally looks like it's never been sat on. The headlining overall is good. It could do with the scrub. It's coming away a little bit in the corner. The lovely brown period carpets are all nice and clean. The dash does have some mild cracks on it, but overall is pretty good. I love the interior. The interior is probably, my favourite bit of the car. And my other favourite bit of this car is it's a two-door. And in my opinion, any car in a two-door is better than a four-door. I just think the proportions look much, much better in a two-door. If an Allegro can ever have good proportions, then a two-door definitely helps that. And of course, the colour. This Allegro is in antique gold, which is a beautiful retro 1970s colour. To my eyes, it looks a bit green, but I am colourblind, so we're going to stick with antique gold. And of course, we have the engine. So like many other British Leyland cars, this little baby is powered with a 1098cc engine, which, to be fair, goes pretty well. I think Allegros do get a lot of criticism for being sluggish. However, I wouldn't say this is sluggish. It goes pretty well. Another good point about this Allegro, which is probably why it is not an absolute rot box, like some of them are, is it has been Z-barted, which is a rust proofing that this car would have had from new, which has saved this car, I would say, because as far as I'm aware, it's mostly, or maybe even all, an unwelded car. I just can't help but think that this is a particularly good Allegro. I love its originality. I love how straight and solid it is. I think, as far as Allegros go, this has got to be a good one. Overall, my honest opinion on the Allegro is they're not that bad. Would I own one? Maybe not. There are plenty of other cars for me to own, but let me know what you think. Do you like Allegros? What do you think of the negatives of Allegros? Why do you hate them? Why do you love them? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.